All right, we'll start. Good evening, everybody. Call this meeting to order. The regular council meeting of April the 11th. Welcome to tonight's meeting. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional territories of our friends and neighbors of the Dene and Cree people of Fort Nelson First Nation, as well as the Dunnizah from the Prophet River First Nation. We recognize the rights that are inherent in the treaty, and we celebrate all of the cultures that live in the Northern. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available to the public to attend virtually and is being streamed and recorded. Are there any additions to tonight's agenda? Council? Staff? Thank you. Adoption of the agenda, please. Moved by Councilor Andrews, second by Councilor Roper. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. There are 3 sets of minutes there. Regional Council meeting from March 27th, public hearing from March 27th, and the Committee of the Whole meeting from March 30th for adoption. Moved by Councilor Goering for adoption, second by Councilor Roper. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor of adoption? Opposed? It's carried. Is there any business arising out of those minutes? Staff? Council have any business arising from those minutes? Okay, 6 is the public comment period. Anybody from the public who wishes to speak about anything on tonight's agenda? Is there anybody online who's got their hand up? No, thank you. So that brings us to item 7, and I'm very happy to welcome Sue Kenney and Russ Beerling from Community Futures here to give us a bit of a presentation, I guess, about this. Welcome. You can just turn your mic on, please. There you go. There you go.
Okay. All right. Do you put the presentation on the screen or you do? Okay. I know. I always bring a presentation and then I miss half of it. I end up talking. But it is great to be here, and thought, you know, it was important to be here. We were waiting for the new council to come in, and then for the new council to just get situated and that's, we thought, you know, it'd be a good time after the new year to visit all the communities and talk to them about community futures. So today I brought our annual report and just talk about who we are for those of you that have never heard of us. We are one of 290 community futures from across Canada. So we're a fairly large organization. We're small organizations within our communities, and we deliver services to businesses and right across rural Canada, right from Vancouver Island to Newfoundland. We were started in 1985. Our community future started in 1985. We were one of the first community futures to start in British Columbia. And we were originally we were under HRDC, if anybody remembers HRDC. And we were called Peace Leard Ventures at that time. And then later in the 80s, the economy tanked and businesses were struggling, but the banks wouldn't lend to businesses, and they definitely wouldn't lend to new entrepreneurs. And so they formed a funding and called it Community Futures. And so all of us that were involved with HRDC, we rolled into the Community Futures role, but we're all our own entity. We're all non-for-profit, and we are governed by a volunteer board of directors from our communities. And we receive funding from, it was Western Economic Diversification, but now it's Pacific Can Regional Economic Corporation. And so we are guided in a 5-year agreement with Pacific Can, and in that agreement, it is to take care of loans, provide loans to businesses. But also So we are paid to provide loans. At the beginning of, like in the 80s, each community futures was given $100,000 loan fund to start to lend out. And then it went up to $1 million. So across Canada, $1 million was given to organizations, community futures corporations. And today, we have $10 million total that we have lent out and then cash on hand. And like right now, our cash on hand is about $1 million. The rest is all out working in our communities with small, medium-sized businesses and new businesses. So about our region, so we cover the Northeast up to Atlan. We don't get too much business after Fort Nelson, but if we are asked, we will come. And Terrace is on the other end. So Community Futures Peace Yard kind of meets Terrace, who comes from Terrace over to Atlan. And we have a friendly agreement with Terrace there. You know, Terrace is out that way more often, so we're okay with that. We don't compete with each other. Our chair is Naomi Larson. Naomi's the manager of the Chetwynd Chamber of Commerce, and she has been our chair for 2 years and is going to be entering into a 3rd year after June of this year. And these are our present board of directors. So Naomi, Lilia Hansen, Mike Wally, Lori Archibald, Jan Coleman, Dustin Bodnar, Kate Hustak. They represent the communities in our region. Some have regional positions, and we are still looking for a representation from Fort Nelson and Tumbler Ridge and Hudson Hope. And then we'll fill that, you know, it's always hard to get new board members out, and it's because of the travel, but Zoom has made it so much easier now. And it's funny, when we have our board meetings, even our people, like our main offices in Dawson Creek, and our Dawson Creek board of members are zooming in to the meeting because they're all busy. They all have their businesses or they're working. And so it's just better for them that they can put work aside and take that hour out or have a board meeting. So if you know of anybody that would be interested in being on our board of directors, that's one ask I have for you at this meeting. It would be great to have someone on board. And then there's our staff, myself, Bonnie McLean, who is from Fort Nelson many years ago. I think she's been gone 25 years. Tracy Mazzaros and Joanna Fenney. So you see, we have a very small staff to cover a very large area. At the present time, we have 2 extra people. So Russ Bierling. Russ was on our board of directors for 10 years. And you're only allowed to be on for a certain amount of time, and then your time out. You got to step back. And but we had contracts for regional business liaisons in the region, and Russ being a business owner and knowing the region, and if anybody knows Russ, has a tremendous gift of gab. That he's been a great resource for businesses, and we've really seen an uptake in our programs with Russ on the ground and Fran Hoyen. And some of you may know Fran. Fran worked for the regional district for it was 7 years, and so she's been with us now for 3 years, and she's really made a difference. But again, the funding is some of the funding was from NDIT for regional business liaison contracts, and then we had a contract with Community Futures, and it was funding through Pacific Canada. We received $5 million to support businesses in communities that were suffering from the disasters, floods and fire, but also the mill closures and what's happening in the communities with that rely on forestry. And so this is a 3-year funding, and there's 12 community futures in the province that are part of that program. And so it provides free services for businesses, free consulting services, business coaches. It provides training for well, we had in Haida Gwaii, we had 3 companies get together and bring in a trainer for class 1 for the truck driving. And the training was paid for through the Taking Care of Business program. And that's the program that Russ is working presently with right now. Yeah, look at the board, because I think I probably just talked about that. And so here we're talking about our business loans, our numbers and stats. So right now we're at 10.5 million, and the average loan is anywhere between 70,000 and 100,000. And 70% of the loans are for medium and high risk, and 40% are for startup. That varies from year to year, but it usually kind of stays the course. We also do syndicated loans. So we've done loans, we've partnered with other community futures in British Columbia, and we've lent up to 7 million by spreading it out. We all put 150 or 175,000 in, and we can do these large loans. And just one community futures will take care of the, like, they'll work with the client and they'll do all the due diligence as far as making sure that it's a good business. And you really do want to do your due diligence, because we have a couple of syndicated loans, and I certainly don't want my peers to be losing money. So make sure that the loan is good, and also that business brings, they have to bring a lot of skin into the game. It's not, they have to, like, at least a third, in order to get that loan. When you're borrowing that much, you should have that much in order to be successful. So these are our numbers, and it's really small print. For those that can see, what I was trying to explain here, when you look in the first column, the WD targets, in our agreement, we have, I can't even read that. So, yeah, so like right here, so our WD targets for business training sessions and supports, we are expected to provide that to 100 businesses or 100 participants. And our business advisory services, we should have at least 300 a year. And then the total value of the loans, we should lend out 400,000 a year. That is what, those are the targets that we have to hit. But every year we exceed those targets. Every year. For 100 here, we did 215, 211. Oh, we did 100, 2021 COVID. and then 21, 22, 231, 300 for the last fiscal year, 2022 to 2023, up to March 31st. And so the total targets is 500 for when you look at those years, 5 years, we should have 100 business training sessions, and we have 1,156. We've done 3 times what we're supposed to be doing, and we do it over and over again. This reflects this number here, the 8 million, reflects that we in 2021 we got heard the CERB funding. We called it RRF funding. So we went $4.7 million in that RRF funding, and that money all went out the door. Like the majority of that money went out the door in a matter of 5 months, and it was just amazing. Some very, very, very thankful businesses through the course of that. It was instant. like, all they have to do is phone, send their two tax return proving that they were in business, and we could write the loan agreement, and they had to, in some cases, the next day. If we could turn it that fast, and that's the advantage of community future is that we don't have the bureaucracy and corporate heads like banks do, so we can move real quickly. And we have our loans committee, but for our regular loans, but for the triple RF, that was done by staff, and we just needed to see, they had to prove that they were in business. And they had to prove that they had a loss due to COVID. And it wasn't too hard to figure out when you looked at the tax returns. And so the number of loans, we are required 8 loans a year. And we've never done this date with 2020. So 40 loans we're supposed to have done in 5 years, and we did 680. And then projects, this we're required to look at projects, and we have to do it in our reporting, but we don't receive any funding from CAN or previously WG, extra funding for community economic development or economic development, but it's expected from us. And so, we, we said that we would do two projects, but we've always exceeded it because it's like every community futures has different ways that they work in their communities, and a lot of times it depends on the background of the manager, the backgrounds of the board. And so I've been the general manager now for community futures for almost 20 years. I've been an employee for 21 years, but my background is economic development. So we always have projects. We're never without projects. We always have projects. And yeah, and it's just such a great organization, great people, but right across the country. You've got the important side that we show you that we're working hard for all of you. And then we have our business planning. We have business tools and resources. And so we have the business plan template. You can go onto our website and it's all there. And so this just shows the units that we have. And so you can go onto the website. This is all free, and you can complete your business plan. And if you have a problem getting into that business plan, you call Bonnie McLean, and she'll help you through it. And then the taking care of business, I went over that briefly, but that's a membership program, free membership for businesses to sign up for this. And when they sign up for that membership, there's a plethora of free business workshops that you can attend, and there's peer mentoring, coaching, and training dollars that are they're non-reviewable, like they're for businesses. And the DRE is what I was talking about, the $5 million projects, like the funding that we received. And then we have the Export Navigator program, and that's just as businesses. That's right. Yeah, Russ is also our business, our Export Navigator advisor. And this is a partnership with the province and the federal government, Small Business BC, and Community Futures, and the Women's Enterprise Center. So this is assisting businesses in exporting their products. And exporting, it doesn't have to be out of the country. It can be out of the region, exporting it to another part of BC or exporting it to Alberta. The whole point is just expanding your market. And so that, they talk with clients and teach clients, and the best way for exporting, the best way to get into the export market is do it with your neighbor, and learn more. And these advisors have all the information, and it's constant, the information that keeps coming in. They keep up with all the trade commissions and that, like, across the world. And so through the Export Navigator program, this all funnels into into the Export Navigator program, and then it's shared with the advisors, and then there's advisors across BC that are on the ground and letting businesses know that this is available to them. And then they provide a coaching service to get them through the regulations and get them into the program so they receive all the benefits. And then this is just a couple of companies that we highlighted. CCW Ventures. They're First Nations band from the First Nations band in Moberly Lake in Soto First Nation. And this company, they have these, I don't know what you call these, but they do, like, they work for TELUS and communications companies. They started out with 2 trucks. I think they've got 6 now. They're a young group of men and they're just amazing. They're always growing. So they got their start with Community Futures. And then Stoddard Water Creek Services out of Fort St. John. They, well, it was a water treatment plant and delivering water throughout Charlie Lake and the Fort St. John area. But it's a very innovative way on how it's purifying the water and getting it to market. And then Indigo Designs, she, Karen Thierson, she was a self-employment client, and she started out doing little brochures and that was 20 years ago. And I think she was one of our first self-employment clients when I came on with Community Futures. And now she's done work for the regional district. She probably is, I don't know, she's done work for you guys in Fort Nelson, but she's been doing a lot of work through the Peace of the Arid regions. And she's also the one that put our annual report together. We use her a lot. And then when we're talking about community economic development, we had a very large role in the Tumblerge Global Geopark. When it started with the museum and the Dinosaur Discovery Gallery, it was Community Futures that wrote a lot of proposals and to get funding for materials for excavating the dinosaur trackways and the dinosaur bones. The machines, the vacuums that blow the dust out, and all that looks like dentistry tools to do the excavating and that. And it was a very exciting project. And you know, and through that project, so we were on the board of directors. I wrote their master plan for operating the museum. I don't know if anybody read it. I'm talking about the museum. So they needed the report, but anyway, that's another story. Rob knows a little bit about that story. So anyway, you know, then with all the discovery and the variety of the dinosaur trackways and that, you know, it was in the Smithsonian, like, you know, right across around the world. And so it seemed an ideal time to look at trying to become a global geopark under United Nations. And so then the next bit of work was getting signage up, and then they bring the people in from other countries to look at the park and see if it fits the criteria to be a global geopark. And so there was a lot of work put on that. I was the first chair of the board for the UNESCO Global Tumblerge UNESCO Global Geopark. And it was just a role for a while. And that's what we do with Community Futures. Is, you know, sometimes we'll just go in just for just help get things up. And then once they're up and they're running and then they got their people, we leave. We're not there forever. We're just there when we're needed, and we're just there to build capacity, not take over. Just build capacity and then move on. And it's great moving on. It's great, when these things all come to fruition. And we wrote their master plan as well. They needed that for in order to it was part of what they had to do in order to become a geopark, and that has to be revamped every 3 years. You can't just be called a geopark and then you're like that forever. You get adjudicated every 3 years to make sure that you're meeting the standards of UNESCO. And then these are just, smaller projects that we had done, promoting the Northeast Aboriginal Business Center, wrote a proposal when the rural dividend funding was there. And so we did it for them because they didn't have audited financial statements. And so we did the proposal, they got the money, and we did the financial reporting and managed the project to make sure it met the rural dividends targets, and everything was in order, invoices and everything that we said we were going to do, was done. And so that's the role that we played in that project. And then we did shop local campaigns. We provided funds to the chambers of commerce across the Northeast, including Fort Nelson Chamber of Commerce, and we provided funds for the chambers to run shop local campaigns. And that was, just to, because people weren't going to the businesses. And then we still, this is still ongoing. If you went to this website, Take Out Northeast BC, this started when the restaurants had to close. And so in order to keep the restaurants alive, we partnered actually with Moose FM. And then Moose FM found the other partners. We're Think Local First, Community Futures. And there's a website up, and Moose FM actually, they keep it going, making sure that the restaurants are current. And yeah, and that received so many hits, so it was obviously well used, and we still have it running because we figured if it's still being used, we'll just keep it up there for a little while longer. And then we did a campaign where we promoted businesses on Facebook and social media, and we had videos done. We had a videographer go into businesses and video their business to show that they had the hand sanitizer, they had the screens up, so it was safe. People could go in. Only a couple of people could go into the stores at a time. But some people were just staying home and afraid to go anywhere. And so it was important for the businesses to get that message out. And so that's really what the purpose of this was. And then the radio station would be in the business there, and they'd be broadcasting from that business. And I forget the number. I think we ended up doing about 30 locations. But it wasn't for free. See, we could only do 30. And now, right now, we have the Northeast Cohort Paramedic Training Program. And so we wrote a proposal with to the province under the Workforce Response Grant Program. And we were approached by Columbia Paramedic Institute to see if we would be a cohort with them to write a proposal to the province for funding to put paramedics fully licensed, trained to be fully licensed. And so these 14 people were not out of pocket a cent. This was such an incredible program. And this can happen anywhere, and it doesn't have to be paramedics. It can be anything. If you see, if you have people in your community that are willing to work and are looking for a career, I really encourage you to go on the site and look for the Community Workforce Response Grant Program. It's the proposal isn't difficult, and it doesn't, and it's been used for several. Like they have examples when you go on the website. So, but we were asked by the Columbia, they said it would be, you know, if they can't do it, it has to go through a non-for-profit or another organization. Them as the trainer, they can't do it. So we did it. And then it spread across, and a few other community futures are doing it. And but we've got 14 people right now that were fully licensed. Started with 16 and 14 went through the program. And so then we were asked by the province to put in another proposal because we're still short paramedics. And so now we have 11 signed up. They just started last month. And so it's a little smaller, the amount, because there's less people. But anyway, they've all started, and we just kicked off another program. And then we, for women in business, we've supported Sparks Women's Leadership Conference almost since the inception. And over the past 5 years, we contributed 10,000. We got bigger, needs got more with COVID and everything, and we're down to 5,000, but they still appreciate it. And if you haven't gone to it, like the women in this room, you know, it is, I've been to a lot of conferences, and that one never gets old. It really is the education that you receive there is incredible. I send my staff because they learn so much, and it just makes them better at their jobs. It's about professional development, but it touches everything, you know, on how to be a healthy person working in different work environments, and it really, their speakers are amazing. And then we had Expo. We did that for 3 years, and then it kind of fizzled. And then we have the partnership program with NDIT and the city of Dawson Creek with a facade program. We got asked by the city if we would do it. And so we've been doing it since its inception. And we offered to any of the communities. It was just, they came to us, and so we said yes. And yeah, so that's just, are you familiar with the facade program in Port Nelson? Yeah. So anyway, and then we have the Northeast Regional Community Foundation, and that was matching funds with Northern Development Initiative. The community put 50,000 up, and NDIT would match the 50,000. So we started an endowment fund with the community foundation for $100,000, and so we were approached again, because I guess because our office is in Dawson Creek. We were approached to see if we could do it by one of the councillors. I said I'd research it. And then when talking with Community Foundations Canada, they said because Dawson Creek was so small, small communities struggle having their own community foundation. And so they said, you know, if you could convince the other communities, it would be better. And so that's what we did. So presently we have, and I did come up and speak with your mayor at the time, and Port Nelson wasn't, they weren't into it at that time for whatever reasons. And not all the communities jumped in, but presently we have Taylor, District of Taylor, Goose Coopy, Dawson Creek, and Hudson Hope with the foundation, and Chetwood's going to be coming in soon. They formed their own community foundation, and they're finding it a struggle and hard to manage. And so we're working at moving the Chetwood funds over to the Northeast Regional Community Foundation. That's it in a nutshell. So, any questions?
Any questions?
Just wondering how much of your resources can be found in Fort Nelson or the Northern Rockies? So in terms of business loans, or I don't see Fort Nelson represented in this report a lot other than the chamber.
Yeah, it's, well, as I say, we need representation from Fort Nelson, because that's how people in the communities find out about us. But we do have clients in Fort Nelson,
Okay.
like for sure.
Mhm.
And I didn't break them down in my last annual report. I had to get this annual report out pretty quick because I asked Fran to make appointments with mayors and councils, and then she did it so darn fast. Yes. So what is missing is the breakdown with the loans, because I actually do have the breakdown, but you got to sit and you got to break it down, and I didn't have time to do that. But no, we have businesses in Fort Nelson, and one of the businesses that would have been great to showcase is Archie's Towing. We were presenting to Fort Nelson's First Nations, and he was there, and I'm starting to talk about community futures, and then I didn't have to, I just had to sit back and listen to Archie because he just told his whole story, his startup and how it had helped him, and the coaching and the funding. But we have the self-employment program here, and I can't tell you how many clients are on right now. I think there's about 2 on right now, but like in any community, there's only like 2 or 3 in each community. And no, but we do have loans with Fort Nelson and the self-employment program, and we've been up here with the Taking Care of Business program as well. And we were up here with the regional business liaisons last year and the year before. It's just you roll into town, not everybody sees you, so they just figure you're not there. But yeah, we are.
Do you participate in trade shows?
Yes. Yeah. We're going to be there. No, we're there. Yeah. No, we signed up. No, and we have signed up every year for the Fort Nelson trade shows. Yeah, we've been here. Yeah. Bonnie McLean, she likes to come up here too, because she knows people here, and it's always good for her to come up. But yeah, and we work with we're subcontractor for Work BC. So is it Janice Adams still here doing it? Yeah, because some have changed. Yeah, so we have a contract with Janice with the self-employment program. So we communicate with your Work BC office. Yeah, and we communicate with your banks. It's just, yeah, it's you can go, you walk down the streets and nobody knows what Community Futures is. But if you need us, you find us.
With respect to the Board of Governors.
Thank you. I forgot about that. With respect to the representation on the Board of Governors, are the expenses paid? I mean, I can see around the piece, it's easy
Yeah.
for people to get in for a meeting and then just go home. It's not very
Yeah,
far.
no, the expenses are paid. Your travel expenses are paid.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we were able to convince somebody in the community to participate, then they wouldn't be out of pocket, I guess.
No, they would not be out of pocket at all.
Yeah.
You would, of course, you'd have your per diem to get down there, your
Mileage
travel,
and
your mileage per diem, and then we feed you when you get there and provide you accommodations. And now that we're having quarterly meetings instead of, we used to have monthly meetings, and it just it's pointless to have, it was too many, because there's just not a lot of change from one month to the next. And so you're asking busy people to every month, and it's okay when it's interesting and there's things to talk, about. But we're doing it quarterly now because we report quarterly to Pacific Can. So we thought it made sense. We're winding up our quarterly reporting, so we'll have our board meetings then. We just started that actually, just this year. That's brand new. So it makes it, it's good in one way, I guess, and bad in another way. It's good for the people that have been on the board for a while, but it's not good for people that are just getting on board, so we'd have to, we'd have to work on that, as far as making sure to spend more time with that new board member, because they'll forget everything from one quarter to the next. It's a lot. I remember I started on the board of directors with Community Futures. That's how I found out. I was EDO in Tumbler Ridge, and they were looking for representation. And they asked me if I would do it. And I did, because it's already sending people there. And I was on the board for 3 years before I came on as an employee. And that was when the layoffs happened in Tumbler Ridge and the mines were closing. That seemed like a good gig. And I get to do a lot of what I was doing already. So, but yeah, no one's out of pocket. Everybody gets their per diem, the people that travel.
Anybody have any other questions for Sue or Russ?
Mayor, Beth Vandersteen's attending virtually and wondered if she might ask a question.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for letting me butt in at a time you don't normally let the public butt in. Russ and Sue, so happy to see you here. And then unfortunately, I wasn't able to be there tonight, but was hoping before you leave that maybe you have time to pop into the chamber office tomorrow. I think, there's been lots of opportunities for us to work with Community Futures on various projects and to support your projects here in the community. Would love to see more activity happening and more uptake on the programs. And also would love to discuss with you the potential around the board position. So I just wanted to make sure I caught you before you left town, and just happy to see you here. Thanks. Thank you, Mayor Fraser, for allowing me to speak.
You're welcome.
We're going to be in town tomorrow for a while. So actually, if any of you would like to meet tomorrow, we're going to be in town, and
Good.
So,
Well, thank you very much for making the drive, coming up here and sitting down and speaking with us. I am familiar with many of the projects that you pointed out today, and know that they're benefiting their communities across the piece, North Piece and South Piece. So I also am interested in seeing that there's more uptake here, and hopefully either somebody that we know or somebody that they know over at the Chamber of Commerce will be able to convince somebody to make that drive a few times a year and participate. Because you're right, if you've got a champion in your community, right, then it just goes that much further to get people involved.
yeah, that's what it takes. Like those projects that I was talking about, that wasn't us going and drumming up business. In fact, we don't even put that. The only time you'll see projects is on our annual report. We used to announce it, and then we had to stop doing that because we couldn't handle. People had an expectation in every community, and we just couldn't do it with our small staff.
The demand was too high.
Yeah, and so we just didn't talk about it, and then, but if you needed it bad enough, you'd find us, and it was the champions in those communities that approached us, not us approaching you. And that's how it's supposed to be. We're building capacity. We're not building empires. We're just, responding to the needs in the community.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, that brings us to reports, bylaws, and policies. So we have admin report 1823. For information, it's essentially the feedback from the public with respect to the budget. Any questions for staff with respect to this report? Anybody? All right, can we receive it for information then? Moved by Councilor Andrews, second by Councilor Roper. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you for that report. It was a pretty good summary, and I'm happy to see some of the comments that you pulled together. I guess the commonality comments that you pulled together in that. 8.2 is the Boreal Caribou Protection Recovery Plan assessment options. Staff, please.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. So the report is in relation to the Boreal Caribou Protection and Recovery Plan, the economic impact assessment that Regional Council directed staff to undertake with the help from Stantec. There were options provided by staff regarding the economic assessment during the November 28th council meeting. And during that time, council did resolve that we solicit the services of Stantec to put together a report at the cost of $75,082. Since then, we have re-engaged with Stantec to further define that project scope. And a new project scope was developed at a price of $109,050. So the three options that two of which were previously provided to council, in addition to the third option, have been provided in this report for council's consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Are there any questions? Ms. Thompson. Councilor Grimming?
Can you expand a little bit on option 3, being that that's a new option and substantially higher price, and just wanted to say I'm disappointed that this project was stalled. I think it's invaluable that we have some reports behind us, especially considering that the province still hasn't answered the letter that we wrote. I know that Fort Nelson First Nations has Caribou recovery restoration projects that they've been working on. So it would be great to get some information on that as well. But if we're armed with nothing, then we have nothing.
So the option number 3 was designed based on the conversation at the last council meeting, where we talked about the report having some utility other than just a rebuttal to the province concerning the Boreal Caribou plan, with the understanding that the Boreal Caribou plan has gone to the ministry executive for decision or consideration. So we wanted that plan to ensure that we had more utility than just providing a rebuttal to the province, essentially, regarding the economic impact. We wanted it to have other utility as well. And that's when we engaged in conversation with Stantec in November and December. Unfortunately, the person who was leading that project for Stantec became ill and was unable to continue with the project. So we had to pretty much start from scratch with Stantec and, talk about the project scope and how we might be able to get further utility from that report, which is how option 3 resulted. So the pricing also is reflective of 2023 rates. I will say that for some of our other projects, consulting fees have gone up significantly from 2022 to 2023. So actually, we have confirmed since this report was written that the price associated with option number 1 and option number 2 are reflective of 2022 rates as well. And we would expect to see an increase in those rates if we decided to go with one of those options. I'll also point out that Northern Rockies Regional Municipality did write a letter to the Ministry of Water, Lands and Steward and Natural Resources, or sorry, I can't remember what they're called now. But we did write a letter in September, and we've yet to receive a response. So some of the hesitation has been, do we spend $75,000 on something where the ship has sailed, essentially? So I did mention that in this report, that despite our efforts to reach out to the province to get a response to find out what exactly the status of this report or this draft plan is, we've yet to find out. We've been left in the dark, essentially.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Souls?
I too was doing a comparative between option 2 and option 3. And option 3 has more fleshed out ideas around the trying to find what the contribution of existing forestry and mining and other things would be in the NRM. Problem with that I see is that if we take that approach, when we don't have anything when we don't actually have a forest industry or mining sector, so on, to actually reference directly, then we're still projecting, which is what we're also doing in option 2. So I don't know, I'm curious if there's any response to that, how would I interpret them being differently, where option 2 talks about the potential opportunity loss, and option 3 just maybe defines it tighter with forestry, PNG, mining, and other
Please, is that it?
Yes, the focus in option 3 would be more of a marketing tool, if you think of it that way. This is what we have to offer, and we can utilize that information separate from the Boreal Caribou discussion in essentially marketing efforts, as well as it would have that added attachment to it regarding Boreal Caribou that we could provide to the province.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you just talk to option 3, the timeline is 3 to 4 months, but option 2, the timeline is 6 months.
So option 2, the 6-month timeline was based on the initial estimate by the person we were dealing with initially with Stantec. This one, given that the urgency around, the uncertainty of where the plan sits with the province, Stantec recognizes that. They recognize that there has been a delay responding to what we've asked for, and they're willing to put resources and priority on this to get it done as quickly as possible.
And this rate is going to go up too. It's not going to stay at the 75 because it's
Correct.
right.
We could
But we don't
expect
know
that.
what it would be in comparison to the 100,000
Correct.
for option 3. It could be close.
If you chose option 2, you mean.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, Councilor Andrews.
My concerns with the timelines, like I know the main push behind it is because of the Boreal Caribou Protection and Recovery Plan. And if we're looking for information to help change the outcomes of it, engagement closes May 20th. We're too far behind, I think, to be spending this amount of money to main focus on the Caribou Plan. I want the information, but to what end? If this is closed and we're gonna what we heard report to September, if they're sticking to their timelines, I think we're too late to the ship. So to try to spin it and have more effect where it's not just on the Caribou, I think that's our best bets.
So I tend to agree with that. With my experience with the Southern Mountain Caribou process and how it went, there were multiple communities pressing to get, involved or somehow have an impact on that process, and we had minimal impact on that process. And I just wonder if this ship hasn't sailed, if this is good money spent from the caribou protection perspective. And I absolutely agree. If you're going to go on fight, you want to have good data, good information. But I wonder, are we going to? Do we have a plan to respond or to push on the province with respect to the Boreal Caribou impacts when they haven't even responded to us? A non-response is a response, right? And I mean, and it wasn't like the letter that was sent was poorly done or, inadequately drafted. It was a great letter. Well, we'll take it under advisement. Thank you very much. However, the point that you raised, a couple of you raised, I think, of having a socioeconomic study on the region for other purposes is not a bad thing, because you can use it to try to attract business and try to attract industry. And but I wonder if we're in that. Are we in that space? Are we just projecting, or do we really know what we might be able to do moving forward with a report like this? What would we use? $100,000. What are we going to use it for? Do we have a plan moving forward?
I think there's a lot of uncertainties with anything like this, but we have to fight for the things that we want. And if we don't fight, that will be the certainty, and I don't like that certainty. Is there any chance that we can go back to Stantec, possibly with option 2, see if we can get their previous year's estimate and tighten up that timeline so that we can get that done in the 3 to 4 months? Can we can we talk to Stantec and see what they can do for us, considering that we've been inconvenienced with the delay in this project.
Stantec's been very accommodating, so, and they recognize that, you know, we would like something, and this, I'm sure, is not a small piece of business for them, you know, so they seem quite willing to cooperate and to give us what we want, as long as we're clear of what we want.
You know, and that's what I think we need to understand. What is it that we want, and how are we going to use it? I mean, there was some discussion in the strat planning session about, you know, the pillars of the economic development pillars, and knowing and understanding what we have and how taking advantage of any opportunity that comes forward. So information is good for that. So like I'd be more in favor of this if it was skewed more to the future and the economic opportunities that exist here, rather than the Caribou bit. Councilor Gurming, you had a comment.
Okay, then I'm confused. Because I thought, oh, so this began, if I'm remembering it correctly, began a while ago.
Mhm.
And we decided that we were going to do this study because the province said that they were going to do a study on what the economic ramifications of the plan would be on the NRM. And if I'm remembering it correctly, we weren't necessarily trusting what that report would look like. And so we were commissioning our own. So that report, as we suspected, was never forthcoming. Well, and either as ours, as it turns out.
And
Maybe they're using the same consultant, I don't know.
if our experience in the South Piece has anything to do with it, there won't be anything that comes forward.
Exactly. So, you know, to me, we're flying blind, and I kind of like option 3 in that the way I'm reading that this study will then highlight what the Caribou recovery plan, what implications that is going to have, not only on forestry, but on mining and other economic opportunities in the community. Do I have that right? Right. So to me, it would make sense to broaden that. So it wasn't, at the time, we were just concerned with forestry, but now there could be other opportunities around mining. So why would we not look at that?
Go ahead.
Can you staff refresh my memory on carry forward? Did we have a budget for this in 2022 that we were carrying forward? So was it a budget of 75 grand?
Yeah, so we shuffled some shells, but we shuffled the 75,000 that was originally intended for the economic development initiatives project that we didn't utilize in 2022. And then 6,000 from something else.
So it's there, and then it's there.
Yeah,
Well, part of it-
75,000
part of it's
is
there. I don't know if you're gonna get anywhere on the Caribou thing, but I really don't.
So the other thing I guess I
I
could
have no
add too is the part of the conversation at the last council meeting was also to, you know, reach out to our Indigenous neighbors, primarily Fort Nelson First Nation in this instance, to determine if they, you know, would be willing to or interested in undertaking this endeavor. And the answer was no. But they have generously offered to come and provide a presentation to council to highlight some of the restoration work that Catherine Wolfenden's been working on. And the comments that were made were, you know, money's better spent maybe on the restoration side of things and creating that economy as opposed to spending 75,000 on an economic impact study. So there wasn't a lot of uptake in that regard. But definitely wanting to come and present to council some of the great work that they've been doing from a restoration perspective.
Yeah, they have a very good plan in place with respect to Caribou, and I suspect that it's supported by the province, if not the province's plan. So, you know, there's probably no assistance there with respect to pushing back on the province. As I said, if it's anything like the South Piece, their minds are made up and this is done, but
don't we need to know what the economic ramifications of this plan is going to be, irregardless of whether it's a fait accompli? Right now, we're sitting not knowing. what those ramifications are going to be. Am I my thinking is like solid on that?
Yeah,
Like,
that's solid.
don't we
thinking.
want to know?
I understand that, but even if we know, what will that do? What can we use it to, how can we act with that? Sorry?
What leverage?
Yeah,
What leverage does it bring is what you're asking?
yeah, like what does it do for us to, yeah, we know it and we'll be sad about it. But well, if again, back, I can't help, but bring the experiences of the South Beach. We know what happened there. We know that although we saw we argued that there was going to be big socioeconomic, thank you, ramifications, and there was. But by knowing it, it didn't help us prevent that from happening. They wouldn't respond to us. Even with the, with the work that we did on economic opportunities with the forest companies and the companies, that oil and gas companies that were there, the work that we could perform really never amounted to much from the province's perspective. They didn't listen to it. They had their own consultants. They did their own plan. They thought that was good enough. As far as we were concerned, it was lip service to the communities who were pushing back on them with respect to caribou recovery and how it would impact the economy. So coming back to this, if this is based on the caribou and understanding what this will do with caribou, I think it's lost money. But if we do it generally, if the main focus is on economic development and understanding of I just lost the word I was looking for now, the impact assessment and providing information that we can use to move forward on economic development rather than going back on the caribou. Then I think we're developing something that we can use in the future. And so we'll be working with Stantec to redefine the scope of this to a forward-looking document instead of a backwards-looking document. Does my train of thought follow?
Yeah.
Okay.
May I? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it makes sense to just remind council that, so our experience with the Caribou project started long before the
Yes,
South
that's
piece.
right.
Like
Yeah.
we've been fighting this for 7 years, and the province still hasn't mandated anything to us, right? So I mean, part of me feels that because we have been fighting it, it has at least stalled it from taking place. I don't want to not save the caribou, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong.
Agreed.
But we just wanted to be armed with as much information as we can. And I like your take on forward-thinking document, and if in fact it can be used to help move economic development forward in our community, I think that it would be money well spent. I still think that information is always golden. I just really do.
Yeah. Councilor Robert.
And one other consideration is that the South Peace Caribou situation is different from ours, as I understand.
Yeah,
So-
it is.
So it's
It
good
was
to-
the process.
Yeah, the process. for
Sorry.
sure, but absolutely a different situation, and that's why our faith has not been decided. So it might not be too late for us.
And sorry, we might also include the ramifications to the outfitters and, so that, I don't know, I don't know what they are, so I don't know what they're going to be. We don't know what mitigation strategies we, as the NRM, can put in place to help when this does come down. But now we're working in the dark because we don't know. The province promised us the document. It's never given it to us. We don't anticipate that the province will. So we have to do it ourselves.
Councilor Stolz.
I think that there's pieces missing in our picture, and the fact that FNFN probably have a good handle on some caribou survival, forward-looking caribou survival things. we need to ask them to share that with us so that we can be a part of so that we can know what's going on. So we're not left in the dark. And maybe the information that we could gather in a forward-looking way, not related directly to Caribou, but from economic impact, can also be useful information in their hands as well as ours. Because knowing like, I see, like, you can't have a Caribou survival strategy in one hand that is really, really restrictive. Like hypothetically, I'm just saying that because I don't know what the plans are. But hypothetically, you can't have a Caribou survival strategy on one hand that restricts access to forest and oil and gas work and so on, when at the same time you are a partner and a tenure holder of by far the largest forestry tenure. I mean, all of the forestry tenure is somehow tied in that way. And so whatever is going on economically will affect both the First Nation and ourselves and everyone who lives in this part of the province. So I think that working closer with the FNFN to talk about the economic development side is really important. If we don't go that way, if we don't go there, we won't actually have the information anyway. That's the only source of it.
And then the moose strategy is going to be the next one
Yeah.
coming down. That's been telegraphed as, right? So if we don't respond to the Caribou one, then the moose one. I don't know.
Okay, so Councilor Dickey.
I think that it's important that this is done. I think it provides us with information of meeting with the Nation One, because they've done a ton of work around caribou and the protection of caribou. So they've identified the migration paths of the caribou, so they know areas that they want to protect. So I think that the study still needs to be done so that we know that information of where the nations are identifying as protected areas. And I think when it comes to mining, forestry, and natural gas, it gives us information on making our decisions of supporting those types of projects, because we know the identified areas that might be protected. So I think I kind of like option 3. I know it's more expensive, but I like option 3 because I think it gives us more information for the future.
That's a really great point, Councilor Dickey, and this will also lead right into the official community plan, right? This information is going to help the OCP come out with a more fulsome, relevant document, because it's going to look at all of those areas.
If it's forward looking. Yeah. So if there's a resolution tonight to proceed with option 3, do you have enough information to sort of flush out a different scope? I'm hearing that Caribou is not lost in this, but that it becomes sort of it becomes a sub part of a forward looking document. You good with that? Okay, what are council's wishes?
I would make that motion. Do you want me to read it?
Please.
Because we're kind of changing the wording. So, I mean, I can read it out, but I'm looking at option 3.
I think you just have to just make a recommendation that we move with option 3 at the cost and price that's there. I think that'll
Okay,
be good.
so motion to adopt option number 3 at an estimated cost of $109,050 with the estimated time to complete 3 to 4 months.
Moved by Councilor Growing, second by Councilor Andrews. Is there any further discussion or clarification? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. That was a good discussion.
Sir? So may we ask where the balance of that project cost might be allocated for the upcoming budget considerations?
Which?
The Growing Communities Fund?
I don't know.
Sorry, the Growing Communities Fund?
So
Just an idea.
yeah, it's got to go into the budget discussions.
Okay, So you don't have a source of funding in mind at this
I-
point, just,
I don't. I mean, there's obviously the carryover funds that are there,
Yeah.
the 80,000 or whatever we talked about, but the extra 25 will have to go into budget deliberations on the 19th.
Okay.
Yes? Okay. Okay, that brings us to 8.3, which is the Fort Nelson Motor Club airport license and the expansion request. There's a report there for our discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the report is in response to the Fort Nelson Motocross Club and ongoing conversation regarding a request from the club to increase their airport license area that they currently have with Northern Rockies Regional Municipality. Since 2021, we've been having conversations with the club and with the province regarding this. It's a somewhat of a complex situation in that the airport lands were provided to Northern Rockies Regional Municipality through a sponsored Crown grant. The Crown grant has a covenant, both Crown grants for the core airport lands and the 906 hectares surrounding the airport have covenants related to the use of airport operations. As such, when the club made their initial request in 2021, we reached out to the province for advice. The advice was essentially there's options, including subdivision, to deal with the non-compliant use or what the province considers non-compliant use. However, they did say that if we didn't expand the license area, they know that the use is existing, but wouldn't pursue any action. The Motocross Club was informed of that in 2022. However, they asked for further consideration by council in September of 2022. And that information is included in this report. There's also information included around the sponsored Crown grant and what that means, including the covenants that are on title, as well as a list of the divergent licenses or leases that are currently located on Northern Rockies lands. During the council meeting in September of 2022, council asked that staff determine or provide estimate on what the cost would be to subdivide areas of land from that parcel. So that information is provided in the report as well. It would essentially involve us having a land appraisal completed, subdivision through land survey, and then severing off that parcel of land and paying fair market value for that piece of land. Alternatively, we could return all land to the province and it would simply go back to Crown land. So in summary, in the absence of a strategic plan for land use at the airport, we're going to continue having requests on a case-by-case basis and essentially driving blindly with no policy or goals in mind to guide decisions. So for that reason, option number 1 is recommended, which is that land use options are further explored and defined through conversation with the Ministry of Forests, and that a strategic plan is developed for airport lands, and that any decision regarding the expansion of the motocross club's airport license is deferred until that strategic plan can be developed.
Questions for Ms. Thompson? Councilor Souls.
I'm looking at the map right now, the drawn map, not the satellite map, but the drawn map. This is the second part of the report. And if you'll notice just how the shape of this whole land parcel is, you notice how that there's a extension built out to this long open piece of land, and then there's extensions that line up with the secondary airstrip that we're not using anymore, and the length of the whole thing is related to the fact that you've got the long runway there. And I recall that, I'm not recalling exactly when, but I'm recalling in the not too distant future, maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago, that we were talking, I think it had in relation to the fact that we are doing brushing contracts every year for the last 3 years now on this, that it would have been the preference of the Ministry of Transport to have, to have all of that land cleared off, because the tree cover is something that they would rather see without. So when I just hold that idea and realize that the land where the motocross site is, the usage by the motocross site is just surface. They're not building skyscrapers. They're not building anything. They're just using what's on the surface. And they're actually accomplishing part of what we want to see by keeping some land managed. Look at how fast we clear some land on the southeast, southwest side of this, and we find out how fast the trees want to grow back. They're actually keeping an area that they use every year, and therefore we're keeping the brush down. I think actually uses like that. And I'll just add one other thing, and that was many, many years ago. I was approached in the early years of farming here and asked if there was a way that we could turn a bunch of the airport land into grazing land. And of course, the farmland was hardly developed around here at all at that time, and nobody had time to look seriously at that. And yet the purpose for asking that was because they know that the trees keep coming back and filling everything in. So I can't see it being in a very much conflict for us to actually continue usages like what the motocross are doing, even especially if they want to expand what they're doing. And you know, it's not as though you're giving them title to the land. It's not as though you're destroying the land. You're just actually keeping the trees from growing back. And if, as far as policy, like from a policy point of view, I don't think that we're ready as a municipality to go and clear every hectare of that land that the ministry would like to see. God, there's a lot of hectares still to go because it's very costly to do. And so if we find mechanisms to work with people that want to keep the brush down, I think let's go for it.
Councilor Enox.
I tend to agree too that the motocross club is an amazing nonprofit we have in this town. They work incredibly hard. All of it is volunteer based. And like Danny said, it's a matter of, you know, gravel and sand piled up that would, you know, down the road, if we do need that property, it wouldn't take a lot to push that over. Their race in July, I've been involved, I don't know how many years now, on their race that they have here in July every year. And there's families from all over southern BC, all over Alberta. I don't know if there's anything further than Alberta, but you know, 400 plus people are out there for the entire weekend, and it's growing, the race that we have here. And I see no harm in letting them move that kids track to the front.
A point of clarification though is that nobody's saying that the motocross club needs to be gone. Right? Nobody's saying that that this is a bad thing that's going on there. In fact, the Ministry of Forest sounds like they've done this. Fact of the matter is, though, it is not non-compliant. It's non-compliant to what it was originally given to the municipality for. Almost $750,000 given to us for $1 with some restrictions on it.
So then,
And
sorry.
And those restrictions are that it's got to be used for airport use. And this is clearly not in non-compliance, but it's not quite legal non-compliance, as we know, because we got nothing in writing that says that it's okay to do that, like we would do with a property that we rezoned, you know, and now it's whatever they've got is not compliant with the zoning, but they get legal non-compliance. This is one of those things, I think, if you kick the hornet's nest, you cause more problems for yourself than if you hadn't kicked it in the first place. There's potential fines that can, and the fine's not going to go to the motocross.
Yeah.
The fine's going to come to the municipality. Go ahead, Councilor.
So not only then the motocross club is non-compliant, the snowmobile club, public works,
All of it.
everybody is.
That's right. So as soon as you kick this hornet's nest, you know, if forestry really wanted, they've told us, we see, we're turning a blind eye to it. Don't do anything else. That was clear. Don't do anything else. So we can buy this property and use it for whatever we want. But to me, you don't do that on the request of one. I think the staff report is correct. You need to have you need to have a strategic plan with respect to the lands in that area. And if we are going to do the official community plan in the next year or two, it makes sense that the strategic plan around the airport, and if there's general agreement that we should develop those lands differently than what the airport or the province has said needs to be airport type operations, then the community is telling us that, then there's an opportunity to change gears and look at appraisals, look at what the land is worth, you know, pull it out of this, buy it and pull it out of this this agreement that's there. But until you've got general consensus from the community, in an official community plan process, I just can't see us going ahead and buying this stuff piecemeal. Councilor Andrews.
Am I reading this table right? That to get to the total approximately 9 hectares of land plus the 4 extra that's being requested, it's going to be around $42,000 for us to acquire that and now be like conforming to have our leasing holders there?
I figured somebody would be looking at the math. So I was considering the Environment Canada and the Bell Mobility, because that was actually at the time that the Crown Grant was issued to Northern Rockies, there was a requirement for us to enter into a lease agreement with Bell Mobility. So I assumed that the Ministry of Environment and the Bell Mobility would probably be considered in compliance.
Airport, yeah.
Yeah, we could probably swing that. So the total came from the Motocross Club, Snowmobile Club, and Public Works Canada leases or licenses, in addition to the additional hectares being requested.
So just my thought process is to become conforming, to allow the motocross track to expand. It's looking at be approximately $42,000 plus probably some staff time. To make a OCP for that whole area will probably cost more than that, I'm estimating.
And I agree. I think, you know, these numbers are conservative. If you look at the Crown Grant, in order to change the proviso for the old aquatic center, for example, so that we could use that property for whatever we wanted, that was a 3-year process. So it is lengthy. It's not something, and then you end up with a parcel, a 906 hectare parcel with a postage stamp removed from the center. That I honestly think the larger issue is we have 906 hectares out at the airport and our hands are essentially tied of what we can use it for. And we need a plan to figure out what we want that to look like in the future. And then work with the province to ensure that we can fulfill that plan and to make sure that we can actually utilize that land how we see fit.
And the OCP is that, only this is a sub piece of the bigger OCP. Like you would just do it as part of the, so there'd be questions in there to the public about what they thought what we should do at the airport. And you'd go through the whole process of the OCP, including the airport. And so there'd be a separate section in the OCP that talks about airport. And you deal with it at that point. And if it's buying the whole 906, then that's what it is. Or it's buying a good chunk of it. So big enough that you can actually put some type of operations in there. You don't have to buy the whole amount of it, but you could buy a piece of it that makes sense according to what the public is telling us they'd like to see it here. Did Councilor Dickey?
I agree with the recommendation for number 1, to do that strategic plan and start the engagement. Because one of the concerns I have is the B with the camping area. Like I think with the Parker Lake and the Andy Bailey and the campsites that we're doing down there, I don't know if we need another campsite area. But I think the strategic plan will identify that, and the community engagement will identify if we need another camping area.
Yeah, permanent. Potentially it's a parking, right? You don't develop an RV park with sewer and water and all of that, but you've got a general area that you can use for parking. And for that weekend, race weekend, you open it up to allow them to do that. But all of that's non-conforming right now.
Yeah, that's what they do. They just,
Yeah.
they all stay there with their trailers and
Yeah.
stuff, just so they can practice.
And that makes great sense. you know, that you would do that. It just, all of it right now is in the wrong spot. How's it growing?
So am I right in hearing, because my question was what the timeline would be for this strategic planning process. So after this discussion, I just want to make sure that what is in my head is what I heard. So if we decided tonight that we were going to spend $41,000 to buy the land that is needed for these non-conforming
Leases?
activity, thank you, leases, it would still take 2 to 3 years to enable anything to be developed on there legally. Is that accurate?
Depending on how quickly, I mean, if we said as an organization, this is a priority and we want staff to get on this tomorrow, we're at the mercy of the province and how quickly they can, you know, do their end of the process. But it's really what council would like as far as priorities.
So then, if we decide to wait to do this strategic planning of the airport land in conjunction with the OCP planning process, which is going to be much bigger and going to be longer.
That's about a year.
Yeah, then that puts the motocross club at a disadvantage in moving forward with their plan. So I'm just thinking that if we went ahead with the $41,000, and then I know what Lisa said is that, so then we end up with this little spot on this 900 hectares, right? But then we continue with our strategic planning process through the OCP for the rest of that land. Just a thought.
I like that idea, like looking at the leases we have here, they're long-standing. The Snowmobile Club, the Motocross Club, Public Works, Minister of Environment Canada, they're not going anywhere. I don't foresee us in 10 years asking them to relocate. I think to acquire this section and then see us changing our mind on our OCP, I don't see that happening. So I like the idea of pursuing this with the intentions to have a plan for the rest of it as well. But I would be very comfortable in thinking this type of activity would be part of our OCP in that area.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable saying that without going through the public process, but it is that's an option. If that's what council wants to do, council has the authority to do that. Personally, I just think it's backwards. You should be listening to the public with respect to land expansion and strategic planning before you go ahead and do that. I get your point that stuff's been there for a long time. Probably won't change. But I'd sure like the public process to tell me that. Councilor Souls, please.
Just regarding the statement that we're in non-compliance with those sites. I'm not convinced that they're in non-compliance because of I'm not convinced. We could actually flip it on its head and say, maybe the Northern Rockies is in non-compliance because we got trees 30 meters tall on a whole bunch of the airport lands that are not supposed to have trees on them. Let's open this up and figure out who's the guilty party here. Like we might be in non-compliance ourselves by allowing something to go on. And so in the sense, we've had those discussions with them, and they're not going to force us to go out and spend millions of dollars clearing all of that land all at once, getting all those trees down, but they would like to eventually see those trees all down. So if they're not pushing us, which they're not pushing us, we're just kind of afraid they're going to come and tell us to restrict us. They're going to restrict our use. They're not pushing us and we're not pushing them. We just have an existing usage that is benign. It's a benign usage on the land, and it is accomplishing part of what they want to have happen. That is to keep the bush off the land. That's actually, those are real talks that we have had in the past.
I would agree with what's there now.
Yeah,
But we're talking about an expansion of what's there now.
take some more trees out. That's what they want.
Well, I don't think there's any trees there.
That's just not what's in the report.
So I guess one thing I can point out is the province has indicated it's a non-compliant use. They actually called it that. And they said, though, that they won't make issue of it, provided we don't advertise it, we don't create or generate excessive revenue from it, and we don't expand,
And we don't expand,
and we don't expand. It's in the,
so we buy the land then.
I know.
All right, but I think we're at the point where we're just going around here now. So what are your wishes?
You go.
Well, I think we proceed with the subdivision of the land of Northern Rockies Regional Airport and payment of the fair market value with the intent of removing those restrictive covenants from the applicable sponsored Crown grants for areas in non-compliance, including an extension to the motocross club licensed area.
I would second that.
Moved by Councilor Enoch, second by Councilor Roper. Questions? Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
You go ahead.
Do we want to put not to exceed a certain amount of money so that, like, some.
For sure.
caveat
I mean,
on there?
Because essentially what the, not what I was going, what the resolution has said is that we're going to do it and we are going to pay fair market value.
So
Lisa, did you?
one more thing. If we think about the strategic planning session we just had with Christina Benty about making decisions that endure, think about this.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to sway you one way or another, but this does make an impact. That's
I
all.
agree.
Not to exceed $42,000, I guess.
And not to exceed $42,000.
Should we add a contingency to that? Just. in case?
I think we need to do engagement. I think we need to definitely do engagement and get the public opinion of, do we want to buy that land and expand it?
And that's the OCP process. But I hear what you guys are saying. You want to go ahead and at least do the work to find out what the land is worth.
Well, and not to continue to stifle the motocross track's ability to expand, like it's well used. I mean, I'm comfortable in, from what I've heard from the public, there's a lot of people that are involved in the motocross club. They've been asking for several years. So I'm comfortable in moving ahead, while fully understanding that we need to have a strategic plan for that whole area. I just don't want to continue to hold up the motocross club, because I know how long that, I suspect that OCP planning process is going to be a while, and then we'd have to apply and wait for the province to come back. So realistically, how long are we asking the motocross club to not do their expansion plans? Like, we're looking at 2 or 3 years, right? And I don't know that they want to wait that long. Like, so we continue to curtail the size of their events for all of that time period.
I would say that there is a strategic plan, and it comes from Transport Canada. The fact that the land is shaped the way it is, you can go buy that postage stamp in the middle, but it's right in the flyway. It's right under where it's right in alignment with the main runway. And so if we buy it, we'll have to also have with the Transport Canada, the restrictions of whatever it is on that land. We would have to negotiate what we allow to take place on our land because of where it is. There's a reason this land is inside that map, why that map is what it is. And so I don't see that buying it actually provides the solution. It provides a short-term solution that we can get going with the motocross club and keep them from being restricted and so on, but it doesn't provide it would have to have a lot of safeguards built into it on our side in order to meet the requirements of why the land is there.
Okay, last comment. So make it a good one. We're gonna vote here pretty soon.
Well, then, just taking into account what Councillor Souls just said, is there a better spot for the motocross club? I don't know if there's anybody in the gallery that can address that. I don't know. Ken, is he allowed?
If council,
I would like to hear.
Or, yep,
go ahead. Oh, is that not working?
Yeah, so no.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Chair, oh, you're
yeah,
on.
no,
Sorry.
I'm Wade Matheson. I'm on the Fort Nelson Motocross Executive. I've been listening to you guys. You mentioned moving the track. We are open, but that is a $500,000 cost to somebody to move that, to create that track. Put things in perspective, there's $100,000 in donation receipts last year given out to companies and individuals just to maintain the track last year. And last year was a short year. You guys talk about this OCP strategic plan for airport lands. The airport's been there since World War II and nothing has changed. This town has gone through booms and busts and nothing has changed. We are essentially the only recreational user of that land. We're the only ones that are asking for that land. Essentially, Mayor, you mentioned kicking a hornet's nest. I know we have, but we can't go on the way that we are. There's when we inquired about expanding, there was a lot of hostility and disdain towards the motocross club. One from the snowmobile club and two from staff. You know, there's I could give you many examples, but I'm not really here to air grievances. So, but there were some real challenges 2 years ago. We overcame them. But we need some security. We don't want to go through what we went through 2 years ago. Locks were put on gates, barriers went up where barriers hadn't been before, all to restrict our use on the land that we were the only ones that use with permission. We need some security. The motocross club is actually in jeopardy. If we're not, we don't have enough land currently. We have enough for a track, just barely. We do not have enough for a facility. We don't have enough room for parking. Our kids track is in the back where it doesn't receive any sun. It's been wet. We haven't used it in 2 years. It's 50 cc. It's 4 to 6 year olds essentially. Really, why do I'm just a volunteer. Why do we want to pour our hearts and souls into something that really we have to ask permission every single year to park vehicles on here? And like I say, locks went on, and yeah, we don't want to go through that again. We need some security. We need enough room to host a race that brings tourism to Fort Nelson. And tell you, Fort Nelson is known across Canada for motocross, and it's only growing. You know, and not only that, the club itself is not just a motocross club anymore. We changed our constitution this year to be able to help other nonprofits or worthy causes in the community. We want to be a group that you know is not a burden, but a hindrance on the community. We want to be a positive and help others. You know, sometimes we need help too, like this. But like, you know, we sponsor swim days at the rec center. We bought a bike this year to try and encourage volunteers for all groups. Somebody that's a volunteer or a motocross member is going to win the little bike in IGA. And, you know, volunteers are hard to come by in this town.
Brady,
Pardon me?
Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
Thanks for the time. I mean, what I get from what you've said is that the investment will be returned in spades. If the community makes the investments, the club will return it.
Yep,
many
absolutely.
times.
But there is jeopardy of the club itself not being there if something's not done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you very much. All right. Is there any final comments before we vote? Okay.
I think thank you for the presentation there, Wade. I think for me, either one of them comes down to a dollar value. So if we went with two, just listening to Councillor Souls on other regulations we would have to meet that are going to be creating costs in the future. I think either one, I need more information in order to make an informed decision. I need to know how much it's going to cost extra to approve number two by buying the property, and then two, rezoning or re-permitting or meeting the guidelines from the airport or forestry or whoever makes regulations.
My understanding is that that's what this resolution is doing. We're asking staff to go through and do an appraisal, or get the appraisals done on the land and come back to us. Or just buy it to a maximum of X. What if it's over X? So we're asking staff to come back to us, right? So I think we did.
42,000. I mentioned a contingency.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna call a question on this. All in
Right,
favor?
Can I clarify, is the plus contingency part of the resolution then?
No.
Okay.
All in favor of the resolution? Do you want to read it? Please.
Proceed with the subdivision of land at the Northern Rockies Regional Airport and payment of fair market value with the intent of removing restrictive covenants from the applicable sponsored Crown grants for areas in non-compliance, including an extension to the motocross club's current license area not to exceed a price of $42,000.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? I'm opposed. 3 opposed. Can you record our names, please? So Dickey and Fraser. Thank you. That passes. Okay, that brings us to the downtown revitalization project. That's there for your information. Motion received for information, or would you like to discuss it?
It's good. I read it, information once.
Okay, moved by Councilor Gerwing, second by Councilor Andrews, that we receive this for information. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Yeah.
8.5 is the procedure amendment bylaw number 210, 2023 for third reading and adoption. Third reading and as amended. So if somebody will move third reading, we'll ask what the amendment is. Move third reading by Councilor Andrews, second by Councilor Roper. Discussion on that. That just about was going to go vote, but discussion on that, please.
So it wasn't highlighted in a bylaw report. My apologies for that. But the amendment to the bylaw since its second reading was the addition of section 2.1.18 and 2.1.19, which is on page 4 of 11 of the bylaw. So it's an amendment of section 16.2, which provides a bit more explanation around the closure of a meeting and the resolution that is required to be passed prior. So to note that the relevant section of legislation needs to describe the reason for closing the meeting, not just citing the section of the charter, because for the average person, that doesn't mean much.
Yeah.
And then section 16.3 is to be added, which is new to the bylaw, which speaks to that if a meeting is being closed pursuant to the section of the charter for labor employee relations, that council will convene an in-camera personnel regional council meeting, which is a slightly different practice than just lumping personnel matters into a regular in-camera meeting. Which for those of you who've been on council prior, it allows us, or sorry, the new members of council, it allows us to separate that record so that if we're ever to disclose, the personnel related information can be separate naturally. So those are the two amendments since the second reading.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of third reading? Opposed? That's carried. Adoption, please. Moved by Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Souls, that we adopt this bylaw. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, there are two pieces of correspondence and information package there for information. Somebody like to move those for information? Moved by Councillor Enoch, second by Councillor Gruing, that we received the letter from the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture about Danny Bailey Park. We received the letter from UBCM President Municipal Housing, and we received the information packages of March 29th and April the 5th. Is there any discussion on receiving for information? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. I have no new business items. Standing items for discussion, the councilor reports. Are there any reports from council? Councilor Souls.
I attended the Municipal Finance Association Annual General Meeting in Victoria. It's painful getting to and from Victoria.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the meeting was painful.
That too. I found it was basically business as usual for the Municipal Finance Association, given that it's wonderful to be able to crow about your AAA credit rating when you're lending money to organizations that are mandated to have a balanced budget.
Yeah.
It's absolutely so cool
Yeah.
to be a part of that. And but the second thing that struck me funny is that we had a wonderful geopolitical speaker who spoke on what's going on in the world, and basically to encourage municipalities to be careful what they invest their money in, because there's a lot of broken supply chain issues in the world going on right now. So be careful if you put all of your funding into green projects that are requiring certain types of conductors and other mining derived things that are difficult to come by, apart from a very few zones in the world. Anyway, it was very good discussion around geopolitics and how it's affecting current markets. And then we went from there and we were all glad and we all clapped and we visited the guy afterward because he was fabulous to talk to. Then we all go and we sit down and look at our different funds that we are funding, that we keep money in, and I think nobody was listening. Anyway, it was a very good time and I made it home safe and sound, and I was glad to be there. So
Thank you. Councillor Enoch.
I'll make this, well, I'll try to go as quick as I can. This is from the museum. Substantial completion was given to Kalmar on the 10th of March. What remains is some unfinished outside stuff. So Kalmar will return when the snow melts, get it all done. Public open house is on May 7th from 2 to 4. And they'll try to get council and any of the staff members and Mayor Fraser in prior to, but Kim said no promises. Right? Only the 10% holdback remain unpaid to Kalmar, but it's not due yet. The money will come from the NDIT grant, which Kim is very close to having the final reporting completed. The museum and the Event Society partnered to host the concession at the sled dog races at the beginning of April. It went very well and we've committed the 2024 race as well. The museum will also unveil a mascot on May 7th. I can't tell you because I'm sure she's watching. They have 4 students returning from last year and will have to hire 1 or 2 more for the 2023 season. Young Canada Works approved 1 grant out of 3, and 3 more grant applications with the Canada Summer Jobs have yet to be approved, but they should know soon. The property maintenance position remains unfilled and it's been over a year. So that's going to be a challenge, I think. Hopefully not. Newsletter will continue to go out quarterly to members and posted to the museum Facebook page for the 5th year in a row now. Northwest Tel has given the museum $2,500 grant to cover the cost of the phone and the internet for the year. So we're grateful for that. Opening day for the season is May 16th. And they've extended the hours this year because of the tourists getting up early in the morning and coming over. They're going to be open from 8 to 7 p.m. and see if they can catch most of the traffic. Some summer projects on the books deal with the drainage issues on the property. Skirt around the CN Northwest Tel building after it's been moved. Paint the porch of the Hudson Bay House, which was constructed last summer. And just simple landscaping, because of course, with all the construction, a lot of it's been taken out. Cleaning up the remaining construction debris. And Streeper Kennels ran the Canadian Open Sled Dog Championship on the 1st and the 2nd. And it was an incredible weekend. The weather was fantastic. Buddy has won his 50th Canadian Open. This is his 7th in a row now. He beat the 2nd place team by over 2 minutes. His 16-dog team was the fastest on the lap. He had the fastest lap time on the weekend on Sunday. This was the final race of the season for Buddy Streeper, and he has won all 5 races that he competed in this year. He has now won 20 races in a row and has not lost one since 2018. A big congratulations to his daughter, Alva, possibly the youngest ever at the age of 12 for racing in the Canadian Open and competing with her dad. The 2nd day, she cut off 8 minutes of her time. So that was incredible. And finally, Claire Streeper, she won her first 6-dog race of her career.
It's an amazing legacy that they have.
Right? That's it. That's all.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilor Growing?
Okay. So March the 30th, I attended a circular economy for textile workshop hosted by Coast Waste Management Association. I didn't come away with any particular learnings that I can share with you, but I'm going to stay connected with this organization. March 31st, I attended the Community Health Plan Steering Committee, and just a few things to note. Our recruiter reported on her activities to date, which include she's met with the Northern Health staff around how they can work together, the new paramedic to find out what worked well and what didn't on the whole onboarding. The Save On manager, Ree, the in-store pharmacist, Dwayne at IDA, Prophet River First Nations, Byron from Northern Health, Doug Blackie from Health Match, and Moira at the Fort Nelson General Hospital. So she has been incredibly busy. Dr. Fury's visa has been approved and he will be in the community August and September. And she has also updated the Practice Ready pamphlet and the website around health information and incentive programs. The BC Emergency Health Services Community Paramedic reports that the Seniors Better at Home program running through the Lamplighters should be beginning relatively soon, and their wellness program is going well. CPR and AED training took place at Angus School, April the 7th. The unit chief reports 2 full-time positions are being posted and 2 individuals are currently in the recruiting process. And very exciting news around recruiting is they're going to be at the trade show with the ability to conduct interviews right on the spot. So that's like totally cool. And they continue to work with Fort Nelson Secondary School on perhaps having an EMR training program with high school credits. So it can be delivered right at Vanessa's and the high school students can get credits. So that's exciting. April the 4th, I attended the Grace Manor Board meeting, and they continue with their very successful and many fundraising activities. But it's not only has it like developed funds, but it's also providing a connection and activities for the community that people are really enjoying. So they've done bingos and they're having a loony auction and on it goes. And they continue to work with BC Housing to ensure the best possible residential experience. So that's good. April the 5th, I attended the UNDRIP Ethical Spaces Workshop, which provided a brief overview of UNDRIP, DRIPA, TRC, how's that for acronyms, and their connection to what an ethical space might include. If you want any more information on that, there's a website I can connect you with. April 6th, I attended the BC Rural Health Network Implementation Committee meeting. The key takeaways from that hour and a half was the network continues to recruit new members right across the province. They have met with Interior Health around recruiting and retention issues within Interior Health. Really interesting, they continue to meet with Jennifer Rice, who's the Parliamentary Secretary for Rural Health. They really are trying to work to ensure that this role is useful for engagement. And they're encouraging everyone to include Ms. Rice on all of our correspondence that we happen to be sending out in terms of health issues. So you know how we CC Dan Davies and everybody, we should perhaps consider CCing Ms. Rice as well. And lastly, that they have secured funding from Spark BC for a grant that will be used to create research on advancing community engagement on healthcare in rural BC. Thanks.
Good, thank you. So I guess I'll give a very brief report. I did an interview with Moose FM, I guess it was, on the Rainbow Lake Connector discussions that we had. They were interested in that. And I basically told them we're sort of on hold. It was great that we created relationships with those councils over there, that there's many pros and cons to a project like that. And it's a kind of a wait and see thing. We'll see if they want to pursue it any further. Left it at that. Then April 5th, I went to I zoomed into the Northern Health and Regional Hospital District joint spring meeting, where we talked about capital planning. And I guess the highlight there for me was they did go through the entire process of how they do their capital planning. That's essentially a 10-year plan that starts with a master plan and ends with commissioning of whatever facility they build. We are on the list for 2024, 2025 for a master plan to be considered for this hospital. So we're on their radar. Those are obviously questions when we meet with them, and they answered some questions for me that I think that we had, and we're asking them to come. Some of those big capital projects, how they affect us. Particular some of the communication and IT projects that they've got going on across the entire region. There was a pretty good explanation there about what those are about. So I think that they'll have a good explanation. They'll answer the questions that we had when they come and they meet with us. They went through the different types of physician funding and retention, which I thought was a little out of order, because that's an operational issue and the regional hospital district is supposed to be talking about capital. So I think it opened the door for us to be using the regional hospital district when we want to talk about something operational. There might be an opportunity there for us. If they can do it, maybe so can we. We'll have to test the waters on that a little bit. But generally, I was happy with the information that they provided there. And so next meeting is in person in the fall. And of course, we have a meeting with them to come and explain some of the issues or concerns that we have with the overall capital process at Northern Health, and maybe they can talk to us a little bit more about this master plan or starting the master plan for this hospital. Is it a replacement? Is it a major upgrade? What if they got there in their head? But it was interesting to see that there. Okay, anybody else? Good. I did want to talk a little bit, Paul, too, is strategic priorities, just to give a quick update to the public that we did do a strategic priority session last week, or was that 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago now, that included council and our senior staff. I thought it was very excellent progress. I want to thank all of you again, and as well as our staff for participating and opening up and really providing your thoughts with respect to the future of the community. Without everybody's input and thought, including staff, it's the process just doesn't work as well as I'm looking very forward to the report that comes to us, as well as the next step, which is staff responding with an action plan that will speak to that strategic plan. So that was done, and I think it was done very well. So thank you again to everybody. 13, media. Is any media questions? Anybody online? Public, is there anybody in the public that would like to ask a question about tonight's meeting? Seeing none, we can resolve to move into a closed meeting. Somebody like to make the resolution, please? Councilor Andrews, would you read it? Because it's important to the people to know why we're going in camera. Thank you for your presentation.
I'd like to move that the meeting be closed pursuant to section 91AJ of the Community Charter. A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. And J, information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Andrews, second by Councilor Roper. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. We'll recess. Okay, thank you very much. We are, I'll call this meeting back to order, and we will rise with the report from the in-camera meeting. Corporate Manager, please.
So the first resolution moved by Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Gerwing, to offer the NRM's position of alternate director to the Fort Nelson First Nation Northern Rockies Regional Municipality Community Forest General Partner Corporation, CF Corp, to Percy Wright, carried unanimously. And the second resolution moved by Councillor Gerwing, seconded by Councillor Roper, that Dr. Saba Jarula's application to the Northern Rockies Recruitment, Retention, Education, Training Incentive Program be approved in principle, subject to confirmation of eligibility with Northern Health, and that Shafiq Raymond's application to the Northern Rockies Recruitment, Retention, Education, and Training Incentive Program be approved in principle, subject to confirmation of eligibility with the health employer, and carried unanimously.
Thank you. More comments? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Some great conversation tonight. It was good. Thank you.